Welcome to Beatsource Tech. My name's Mojaxx and today we're doing an episode that I've been meaning to do for quite some time. It's almost 2 years since I did my first look video on the CDJ-3000s, the latest flagship media players from Pioneer DJ. In that first look, I do go a lot more into the features and functions that are available on them. So if you've not seen that one, I suggest you check it out first. We'll link it down in the description. But this particular video is all about offering my long-term perspectives on how the 3000s perform and where they fit into the DJ market today. It's been almost 2 years since I delivered my first look video on the CDJ-3000s, and since then I've had this pair in hand for most of that time. Not all of it, they went back straight after that video for a while, and with supply chain issues being what they are, Pioneer DJ have needed to have them back on occasion, including for use at the IMS Summit in Ibiza a couple of months ago, where I believe they were used outdoors next to a pool for a few days. But I do know that this is the same pair. I wrote on the boxes the first time I got them, and so it's reasonable to say that these specific players have had 2 years of use put into them. Which brings me to my first topic of discussion, durability. Obviously, I've looked after these while they've been in my care, and I assume Pioneer DJ have done the same. And on the whole, they still look as good as new. The newly constructed play and cue buttons show no sign of any degradation in performance, which could be an issue on older models, and all of the other controls are working perfectly. As are the jog wheels, which were also revised for the 3000s. At the time of my first look, I liked them, but I don't think I really appreciated just how smooth the new mechanism was. In many ways they do have a similar feel to older mechanical CDJ jogs, but having gone back to those at gigs over the past few years, it really is night and day when comparing, say, Nexus 2 jogs with these. They have loosened up slightly in that time, as CDJ jogs always do, but I still don't find myself needing to ramp up the adjustable tension as much as I did on previous iterations, and the accuracy is still entirely on point. Let's keep it real, Pioneer DJ nailed the static jog wheel thing years ago from that perspective, and so it would have been shocking if these didn't control the music well. It's just the overall tactile experience which is improved here, although I must also shout out the excellent central displays with their more accurate playhead position too. Those are great. Whilst I was glad to see a full complement of 8 hot cues on the 3000s, I wasn't too sure about their positioning, being above the jog wheel instead of the more traditional position below. I can confirm that my fears about accidentally touching the jog wheel when hitting hot cues were unfounded. That's never happened to me, but I'm still not convinced that the positioning is actually better for performance. If it was, Pioneer DJ wouldn't have released multiple devices since the 3000s with pads below the jogs. But I also wouldn't say it's really any worse either. Do I wish those buttons were multi-function and not just hot cues? Not really. When it comes to looping and beat jump controls, you have enough physical buttons on the device, and so I don't really find myself missing extra options there. One thing you can't say about the 3000s is that they lack controls. Between the hardware and the screen, everything you need is always close at hand. The company made a lot of noise about the sound quality of the 3000s at launch, and that's something that's been really hard to quantify in testing. I've recently heard them through the awesome sound system at Solstice in Phoenix, and they sounded great, but were they noticeably better than the single 2000 Nexus 2 they had as a third deck? Not especially. I suspect that if you only play really high quality lossless files through a top flight rig, then you might spot an improvement in a side-by-side comparison, but for most of us there's not much to tell them apart. What I can say for sure though is that the sound of the 3000s is very good indeed, either through the digital or analog connections, and the audio interfaces are very good quality too. Speaking of connections, all is good there. You have the locking IEC plugs for power, a sturdy Ethernet port, and the RCAs for analog and digital. I would have liked to see a second USB-A port for connecting media. As it stands, there remains a single one on top alongside the SD card slot. A second port on the rear would have been ideal for 3000 owners, who could then easily tuck away an external SSD in the back of their flight case whilst leaving the top port free. And whilst I do acknowledge, as I did in my first look, that the 3000s are aimed more at club installers and rental houses as opposed to, say, mobile DJs, the convenience of a built-in SSD drive bay on the players from the competition is an idea I'd love to see implemented on CDJs in the future. The Ethernet port is slightly controversial, not so much for the port itself, that's how Pro DJ Link has worked forever, but for the fact it isn't accompanied by any kind of Wi-Fi hardware in the players. This is another road which the competition have gone down and Pioneer DJ have chosen not to. For me, it's not the end of the world. You can connect the 3000s to the internet via Ethernet, and it's not hard or expensive to add a Wi-Fi access point to an existing network switch if hard wiring isn't an option. Also found on the rear of the players is the USB-B port for connecting to computers for HID control with software. This works officially with Rekordbox, Serato DJ Pro, Traktor Pro 3 and DJ Pro AI, and Virtual DJ have also created their own integration. Now, I would never recommend actually going out and spending the best part of $5,000 on these players just to control software. You are always going to lose a bunch of features on the players, all of which you'll be paying for. But it has to be said that the HID mode with all of those apps is by far the best that Pioneer DJ have ever offered. The displays are utilised far better than they were in the past, the controls feel tighter and more native to the software in use, and the overall experience is just smoother. Indeed, I'm actually seeing more and more Serato users in particular really enjoying HID mode with the 3000s, DJs like Spider and SK83 for example. With older models it tended to be more of a make-do kind of thing, but now I'm seeing more people actively choosing the HID option. In the 2 years I've been testing the 3000s, I've actually spent more time in HID mode than not, thanks to the lack of native streaming options in the hardware. We'll come back to that. At first it was mostly with Rekordbox, which worked great, and now it's generally with Serato DJ Pro, and aside from some disappearing waveform issues with older versions of Serato, which seem to be fixed now, it's been smooth sailing for me throughout. All of the physical buttons on the players, where applicable, work as you'd expect, and really my only disappointment is that you can't scroll through tracks with touch, you have to use the navigation dial. I mentioned the touchscreens there, and of course they're a big step up from the Nexus 2s. They're 9 inches in size, which is very healthy indeed, and Pioneer DJ have made good use of that space with various options for text size and that kind of stuff. On paper, the screens aren't quite as fancy as the competition, with no multi-touch, but in terms of functionality, they're up to the job very nicely. There are still the odd occasions where I forget that certain elements aren't touch-enabled, but it's definitely nice to scroll through your library with your finger, and bringing up sub-menus like looping and beat jump provides responsive controls right there on the screen. In my first look, I was probably most excited about the stacked waveforms on the screen when playing standalone, and yet they're pretty dope. I was a little worried about the viewing angles of the screens when I first got the players. Due to their construction, they tend to go rather washed out when you look at them from a really off-axis position, but in use that has not been a concern. The actual positioning of them is spot on, they're very bright even in daylight, and the resolution is excellent. The 3000 is an APU-based unit with lots of cores to work with, and that's really the main area of hardware improvement over the 2000 Nexus 2s. I felt those were underpowered right from launch, and because of their design, what you got at launch was pretty much what you were getting forever. But the 3000s feel much more snappy and powerful, and that improved architecture means we've already got significant new features in the past 24 months with, I hope, even more to come. At this point, I'll talk about the cloud aspect of the Rekordbox ecosystem, which is something I really don't show enough love to here on the channel. Yes, you do need a subscription to at least the creative plan at $15 a month, but the cloud library syncing really is fantastic. I use it to synchronize one library between my Windows and Mac laptops, with all of my files living in Dropbox, and the experience is truly seamless. It also allows me to set cues, loops, and even create playlists on my phone whilst traveling, and then everything is synced up back to that main library. It's not cheap, but for me that functionality is completely worth every penny, and it's something I use constantly. That works with any hardware of course, but since November 2021, the 3000s have added a whole new element with Cloud Direct Play. This enables you to connect the players to the internet via their Ethernet ports and access your whole Rekordbox cloud library in Dropbox using a prepared USB drive or SD card, which you authenticate in the software beforehand. To be honest, I'm not hearing a whole lot of stories of DJs actually using this feature, although it does work really well. But I also think that the 3000s need one more feature before DJs start demanding an internet connection in the booth: streaming. For me, as a heavy user of both Beatsource and Beatport streaming, that's the one big thing which the 3000s still lack, hence why I've used HID mode so much with the players. But the Cloud Direct Play thing works so well, and the security aspect is so good, I can totally imagine Pioneer DJ DJ adapting that technology to work with streaming services too. At this point, this is purely wishful thinking on my part, but I'd really love to see it. Even if the players couldn't analyze tracks on the fly and you could only play streaming tracks you'd already analyzed in Rekordbox, that would still be huge for me. It would truly make my life using the CDJ-3000s complete. So there you go, my thoughts on the CDJ-3000s after almost 2 years of solid use. I'll rattle off the conclusion as quickly as I can. I have a fair bit to say. Let's do this. Right, firstly, they've won this generation. Right, as much as I love to see the competition doing as well as they have, and they have done well, you know, they've definitely made inroads and they've definitely challenged the superiority and the dominance of Pioneer DJ in the media player space. Pioneer DJ have won this generation as well. The 3000 is the club standard media player for this generation. You know, Pioneer DJ can't keep them in stock. Every time they come into stock somewhere, they're sold out. If you want some, you'll have to get on a waiting list. And that's despite the price. The price is astronomical. Like, they started out around $2,300 each. And street price today, thanks to inflation and supply chain problems, it's like $2,450 each. That's getting on for $5,000 for a pair, or nearly $10,000 for the full James hype. That's a lot of money. But as I said in my first look, they're not designed to be bought by DJs. They're not meant to be bought by DJs. They're meant to be bought by clubs and bars and, you know, festival rental houses, that kind of stuff. That's what they're for. And in that market, they've absolutely won this generation. 100%. That's not to say there isn't technology that I think they could take from the other competitors. There definitely is. I'd love to see some new stuff come to these still. Particularly streaming. You know how I feel about streaming. I use it all the time. For me to be able to leave a laptop at home constantly when using these would be great. We're not there yet. But in terms of the actual dominance of the booth, if the professional DJ booth, the 3000 has won this generation. You just can't deny it. And that's fine, right? I have no problem with that because these are really good devices. When I go to a venue now and I see they've got these instead of Nexus 2s or whatever, that makes me happy because these are definitely head and shoulders above the previous generations in terms of performance. Not necessarily so in terms of feel, you know, but that's the tightrope that Pioneer DJ had to walk between that familiarity for DJs who are like set in their ways and pushing things forward with new tech. And I think they've balanced that really well with the 3000s. My issue around the price, and it's not so much with the price of these, it is with the fact that yeah, Pioneer DJ will happily sell you for a lot less money. They'll sell you an XDJ XZ or an XDJ RX3 or a Rev 7 if you like spinning platters. They'll sell you those. That's great. They're really good devices. But we still need a more affordable media player below the 3000. That's just something we need to see to keep this ecosystem, you know, keep it flowing into the next generation. We're going to need that, like an XDJ 1000 equivalent. Because not everyone wants an all-in-one. You know, people like to use their own mixers. They don't necessarily want to use a Pioneer DJ all-in-one with a Pioneer DJ mixer section. So we need that separate media player, you know, well under $2,000. That needs to happen, in my opinion. Will it happen? I don't know. I don't see any signs of it from Pioneer DJ, but yeah, I really want to see that come along down the line. But overall, yeah, you know, what can you say about them? They are the new flagship from Pioneer DJ. It was not a foregone conclusion this time around. You know, 2000 Nexus 2 came out, and I said, I think in the video for that one, in the review, I said, yeah, these are the new club standard media players. That's it. Like, that's what they'll be. And actually, I wasn't quite so sure about that with the 3000s because they have got some serious competition now. But yeah, they've won. They've won this generation. That's not to say they've won forever, but they've won this generation. And I do think this generation will go on a bit longer than previous ones have too. Because effectively, with the pandemic and with all the chip shortages and supply chains and so on, I think Pioneer DJ effectively lost the first year of the existence of these players. Like, they sold what they could get and what they had, but I don't think they really had as many in the market as they would have wanted to. That's my take on it. I think they will last longer as well because, unlike previous models, these are based on such powerful processing units that they've got the potential to actually be much improved and have new features added over time. That potential is there. You're not locked into this kind of firmware-driven kind of operation that we had before. So yeah, I would not be surprised if the typical cycle of sort of 4 years or so for a flagship is not extended this time. And again, that's me just speculating. I don't know. But yeah, I think these are going to last a while. And I don't think if you are deep of pocket and you are looking to buy some, I don't think you have any fear of these being replaced anytime soon. I think these are going to be around for a long time to come. And I'm very, very happy to see that. So there you go. Let us know in the comments. Have you encountered the 3000s now at venues? Have you been using them standalone? Have you used them with HID? Have you found them to be a big improvement over the previous generation, as I have? Or is it the kind of stuff that you're not really too fussed about? And do you think that media players are going to be the future? Or are we going to be all just playing on all-in-ones or just playing off our phones? Where do you think this kind of tech is going now? Because for me, that standalone life, it's kind of on hold right now because I need the streaming. But if they can get that in there, then I would probably go fully standalone pretty much all the time again. So I'd love to know your thoughts. Let us know in the comments. Thank you for watching this episode of Beatsource Tech. I do hope you've enjoyed it or found it useful. If you have, please give the video a thumbs up and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. I'll see you next time.